Hello, what a pleasure it is to be here at the conference today. I am so sorry we're not meeting in person. I had the very great privilege of coming to South Korea a few years ago and take part in the Asian Leadership Summit. And it was a fascinating time and a country that clearly has huge potential in Agritech. And I'm very honoured to be here giving this talk today. I hope our paths can cross in person sometime in the future. What I'd like to talk to you about today is around connections, collaborations, and commercialization, which really I think are the 3 C's of how we can accelerate Agritech adoption, development, and widespread commercial use on farms. And I'd like to talk a little bit about the trends and the technologies in agriculture that are really setting the scene and laying the foundation for 21st century agriculture. Now, there is a shift in agriculture, I think globally, from regenerative and productive. We know that there are some huge challenges on the food system, and I'll talk about those in a minute. But scenes like this, where we're seeing runoff, where we're seeing soils being depleted, where we're needing to cultivate in inhospitable environments, and where there's actually quite a shortage of key natural resources such as water. We're now able to harness technologies such as Earth observation technologies and get that communication with machinery on the ground being really highly informed based on data that we're getting in an unprecedented way. And then being able to unify and integrate that data, all the variables on farm, from inputs to weather, to soils, to different varieties, and being able to use those in a single integrated platform and use that to inform the machinery that's being used on the ground. We now have the opportunity for unprecedented views of our fields that we've never been able to see them like that before, not just of the potential for yield, but also where there's nutrition shortages, soil compaction. Such exciting new insights are being revealed. And something we're seeing increasingly is that sitting side by side of really quite advanced machinery alongside biodiversity. This is a picture that was taken in the UK over the summer, and those flowers are really important for pollinating insects. And you can see in the background a state-of-the-art sprayer. So being able to integrate that biodiversity management with highly productive agriculture is now really exciting. We'll talk a little bit about the role of vertical farming and technologies such as AI and machine learning in vertical farming. I also wanted to just flag up, this is not really AI or digital, but some really exciting innovations coming through around helping to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. Huge pressure globally to do that. This is an example of a mask that was developed by a company called Zelp, and that mask absorbs greenhouse gas emissions that are released by the cow during the eructation process. The use of digital AI technologies to monitor not just productivity in livestock, but also welfare. This is really exciting opportunity to make sure that we understand how the animals that are in our care in the agricultural system are really being looked after to the best of our ability, and ensuring that their welfare as well as their productivity is being taken into account. And finally, we'll talk a little bit about alternative proteins. This is a black soldier fly, and this species is being used increasingly the world over for food and feed, and in some cases energy production as well, but really important insect also to help reduce and manage waste. So that's set the scene. I hope none of that is new to the audience here, but just to get our minds thinking Agritech. Now, I'd like to turn to the scale of the challenge, and I probably don't need to inform or advise this audience of the scale of the challenge, but I wanted to just set the scene with this pyramid, which I really like, was published by the Food and Land Use Coalition a couple of years ago. And if you look at the top of the pyramid, healthy diets, so central to healthy global populations, access to enough food that is of the right calorific and nutritional makeup, really sits at the top of the pyramid. And the enablers that sit underneath that are, as I've just said, productive and regenerative agriculture. There's no point in us only having a 10-year agricultural system that's then broken. It needs to be regenerative in perpetuity. And key to that is protecting and restoring the natural environment, which we know is so crucial to being able to deliver on this productive agricultural ecosystem, and indeed not just on land, but also in the oceans. So being able to work alongside those nature-based solutions is critical to a healthy diet. And then a wider choice and supply in our diet, and diversifying protein supply. We talked about the black soldier fly in my previous slide, but alternatives such as synthetic meats now coming along, and alternative plant-based proteins, as well as microbial products of fermentation. That protein supply, not just for human food, but also for animal feed, really needs some investment. We know that a horrifying proportion of the food that's produced by farmers actually is never eaten. It is wasted or it's lost through post-harvest storage wastage, or indeed in the home. So being able to tackle that, and also being able to harness these local loops and linkages, closing up the supply chain. I think we are all seeing some global challenges around the vulnerability of the supply chain as a result of the COVID pandemic, and being able to harness those supply chains to make them more resilient and more robust is going to be crucial. And at the bottom of the pyramid, standing, being the foundation for all of this, is of course the digital revolution, and we'll talk about that for the rest of my talk. But across the planet as well, stronger rural livelihoods, it's a major challenge. Here in the UK, very many of the farms are operating below break-even point, and that is not sustainable either, nor is it good for those individuals who are trying to run those farms. So being able to embed and embrace stronger rural livelihoods is really crucial. And of course, ensuring that that opportunity is equitable, and the gender and demography issue is addressed, and we have more diversity and more balance to make sure that there is a much more robust base to that pyramid. And this isn't just a nice to have. The Food and Land Use Coalition actually did some calculations, and you can see the size of the prize. By 2030, the prize, the economic prize for investing in this way, could be nearly 6 trillion. That's 10 years away. We could have that kind of benefit. And it's even more, it's more than $10 trillion by 2050. And to achieve that, yes, there's some investment needed, some quite serious investment, 300 to 350 billion US a year. But look at the gearing in that. Look at the business opportunities, a projected $4.5 trillion a year as a business opportunity within the next 10 years. So this is not just a nice to have. This makes economic sense as well as environmental sense, and to ensure that the individuals who are obviously central to that pyramid have enough adequate food to eat, and we do it in a way that doesn't destroy the planet. And of course, we would argue that Agritech is central to, as an enabler to a lot of that. So what we're seeing is an increasingly data-enabled agricultural ecosystem. And machine learning and artificial intelligence are absolutely crucial to this. I know this is an AI talk in the UK. We have AI in agriculture is also artificial insemination for cattle and livestock, and that is a whole different talk. So just to be very clear, today we're talking about artificial intelligence in the data and computing sense. I wanted to just also remind ourselves about how innovation management is changing and has changed. So this was a piece of work that is very well established. Henry Chesbrough, back in 2003, spoke of this closed versus open innovation. And traditionally, what we have seen is a funnel where the science and technology-based publicly funded research enters that funnel, and it moves along that funnel through the development phase, which is very closed. It's usually in-house, in businesses, and that it emerges at the end as a new product or service to hit the market. And what has been happening in other sectors, and is now finally starting to happen in Agritech, is that it's not just the in-house internal technology base in businesses, but the external ones as well that are feeding into that funnel. And that funnel is no longer closed and kept in-house. There's technologies passing in and out. It's a very leaky funnel. It has holes in it. Technology can come in, it can go out, it can be spun off, it can be licensed. And what comes out at the end, yes, it can address not just the current market, but also for some businesses, it's addressing new markets, and indeed can be used and licensed out for other firms' markets as well. And we're seeing this starting to happen. So companies like Airbus, for example, a defence company, very interested in agriculture, their Earth observation technologies are now very relevant to agriculture. And there are a lot of examples of that. And I want to just kind of expand on that point. Agritech, I think, is in and of itself is not a sector on its own. It's about harnessing enabling technologies, and it doesn't really matter, I don't think, which sector they come from, and that's what makes it so exciting. So if you look at those pictures along the top, these are what I guess we might think of as the traditional industry enabling technologies for agriculture. So agricultural inputs, sprays, fertilizers, pesticides, large machinery, combine harvesters, plant breeding, and we'd put animal breeding in there as well, I guess, for new varieties and new lines. And then the other picture is a robotic dairy, so robotic milking, so some use of some really quite sophisticated engineering targeted very specifically to the agriculture market. But look at this, the automotive industry, aerospace, shipping, construction. We could put health and life sciences in there as well, biomedical. All of these industries are all developing innovations which are now proving to be extremely relevant for agriculture. Most of these companies wouldn't describe themselves as agri-tech companies, but oh my goodness, are they developing innovations which are very relevant to the industry. So I think we're seeing a very exciting integration of this open innovation approach with technologies from other sectors being applied in the industry, wanting to learn about agriculture, wanting to understand the route to market, the challenges facing farmers. And let's remember, these technologies have been validated in these other sectors. There's an example in the UK of a technology that has been developed and is being used in the shipping industry and is now being used in glass houses to measure the water status of ornamental plants in glass houses in the UK. So very exciting opportunity to harness these enabling technologies from other industries and feed them into agriculture. Now, agriculture has a very deceptive value chain, I think, starting with the discovery research and moving through that innovation funnel that I described in a previous slide, through the applied research, translating it in a way that is then useful to farmers, embedding it on farm for production, and then process packaging, distribution and wholesale and going out to retail. And just think about the complexity of those supply chains that are involved. And I think the pandemic, as I said earlier, we're starting to see some real vulnerability in global supply chains. Certainly in Europe, the shortage of lorry drivers, HGV drivers to transport the logistics industry is becoming a real issue. We have shipping containers from Asia are starting to get backed up, or indeed we haven't got shipping containers are being transported when they're actually empty because there aren't the drivers to bring product to be able to fill them. And being able to harness technology to help us navigate through these very complicated supply chains is something that, again, we're starting to see, and I will give you some examples of those a bit later on. Now, this slide is something we developed a while ago just to give some examples of where the opportunities and the harnessing of the digital technology sits. And you can see around the wheel, we're looking at crop choice, cultivation, harvest, storage, logistics, all of these different elements that a farm business needs to think about. And there are digital enablers at every stage. Now, underpinning that obviously is the data that is emerging and being able to harness that data for actionable insights, leading to communications, not just between people, but between people and machinery and machine to machine as well. And that all comes together as a perfect trio to deliver the impact we want, which is a productive and a regenerative agri-food system. Now, again, this is a slide which is a schematic, and we developed this a while ago as the farm of the future. And it was only about 4 or 5 years ago we put this slide together, made this graphic. And this is now not really the farm of the future, it's the farm of today. So use of robotics and drones, smart irrigation, smart use of energy, use of technology for animal welfare and breeding, vertical farming. I won't read it all out. You can see the slide for yourselves. But this is the kind of technology-enabled farm that we're seeing in the future of today, really. And to a greater or lesser extent, most of the farms that we are seeing that we work with have at least one or more of these innovations that they have developed. And probably some of the easiest that people are doing is around robotics and drones. Most people have a drone now, or their agronomist has a drone to help them gain those unique insights into their fields. And most people are understanding that they have a lot of data. They may not know what to do with it, but they have a lot of data. And I just wanted to touch on vertical farming as a concept. So these are some slides that are architects' impressions of how vertical farming could be embedded alongside urban development as well. Now, we are seeing the world over some significant investment into vertical farming. We've done a bit of analysis. We've been working with some of our members. And the vertical farming, closed environment, controlled environment agriculture is really exciting. Some are making the business model work. Others are struggling a bit more with it. And the key seems to be not the plants themselves, but around the energy equation. And having these facilities where you have enough natural light to be able to support the plants is really crucial, and to be able to ventilate and maintain the right temperatures in these systems. So for the right crop, in the right place, for the right market, there is a huge opportunity. We haven't actually seen most of these very ambitious systems come to fruition yet, but I think it will come. It will come. Now, I wanted to move on to give you some examples of some technologies that have been developed in the UK, which hopefully will just spark some interest and inspiration and excitement as to the art of the possible. And I'd like to start with a hands-free farm. This was a concept that was developed at Harper Adams University in the UK. And the idea was to grow the first arable crop without any human intervention at all, entirely remotely. And it's been going, the first was a hands-free hectare. And the technology is really quite a simple, relatively old piece of machinery, but it was customized with lots of cameras and sensors and technologies to be able to develop this machine, which can indeed harvest and grow autonomously. And this has won a number of awards, and it has been expanded to now be the hands-free farm. It's still really at a demonstrator stage, and it's for those of you who are in the audience who are perhaps interested in developing these technologies, please do get in touch and we'll connect you with Harper Adams University. That really is a European, if not world-leading test bed for these kinds of technologies. And I'll show you a video of the machine in action in a minute. Robotic harvesting, particularly at the moment when with the UK, as you will probably be aware, has voted to leave the European Union. So we now have a shortage of migrant seasonal workers. We rely a lot on European workers for our fruit harvesting. That's also it's also a cost as well. So this was a trajectory that the UK was on quite some years before Brexit, but has now really been accelerated as a result of the labour shortages. And there's some examples here. The University of Cambridge are working with G's Growers, which is one of the UK's largest salad producers. And you can see the picture there, the robotic hand grabbing onto the lettuce and the other knife slicing it as a robotic harvester. This is being trialled in the field at the moment. Dogtooth Robotics is another UK robotics startup. This is a picture of the robot entering the conference. At our conference a few years ago, it's a strawberry harvester, and there's another strawberry harvesting technology that's been developed by the University of Essex in collaboration with a major fruit grower and processor in the UK. And I'll show you some video of that in a second. Another challenge is by automating these kinds of crops is that the crop doesn't all mature at the same time. And if you look at this is a field of broccoli or calabrese, it is the skill of the picker to be able to recognize when that particular head of broccoli is ready for harvest. And that's extremely difficult to automate. However, with AI, that's starting to happen. So this is being undertaken at the University of Lincoln in the UK. And you can see the picture on the left-hand side is the image that the AI can see, that the computer can see. And the red blotches are the ones that the computer is deeming are ready for harvesting. And you can see not only just running that across the field would give the farmer some insights into the availability of what is then, how mature the crop is, but you can then put this onto a robot. In the bottom left, the white piece of machinery is the robot. And you can see how that can start to come together with a very exciting automated robotic harvesting system. So I'm just going to show you a quick video which shows some of these robots in action. So I'll try and talk over it. This is the robot that you saw in the previous slide. Very agile, very light, soil compaction being a major issue with the increasingly heavy machinery. Farmers want to keep their soils full of biology. This is the University of Essex strawberry harvesting robot, I should say speeded up, and also speeded up. This is the hands-free hectare or hands-free farm machinery from Harper Adams University at its first public outing, harvesting a crop without any intervention. Using this kind of machinery for phenotyping of field trials in plant breeding, being able to yield as yet unprecedented insights into the behavior of crops, different lines of crops through trials, and to deliver different inputs. And also here you can see the robot just being used as a workhorse alongside the human pickers by being able to just transport product around the glass house. And of course, they're very good at doing things that are dirty and dull and dangerous and working in all conditions. So a little overview there of some UK robotics in action. So let's talk very briefly about controlled environment systems. And these range from the glass house to net house to entirely controlled systems that are really under very, very close management. And with all of these, the integration of the environmental systems with the productivity of the plants is really crucial. We have a number of these in the UK to a greater or lesser extent. Some, like the large pink facility, is a huge facility. It's a very significant commercial outfit. There are others. Some of them are more of a hybrid between controlled entirely closed environment and glasshouse. But again, being able to harness the use of AI and machine learning to be able to inform for predictive growth models and things like that. So speaking of predictive growth models, I want to share with you a piece of work, a project that was developed by Agrimetrics, which is one of the UK's national Agritech centres, and you'll be hearing about that in the discussion session that I'm moderating a bit later. And they have been working with NIAB, which is the National Institute of Agricultural Botany in the UK, works with Cambridge University Farm. And NIAB has developed a predictive yield model for potatoes. Now, it's a real holy grail for potato growers to be able to get a sense of what kind of yields they're going to be getting. What are those tubers doing under the ground? And obviously the only way they can have a sense of that is to actually dig some up. And you don't want to do that very often. And there's a wider implication for this as well for the bigger supply chain, because imagine if you're selling your potatoes to one of the significant processors, one of the fast food chains, for example, or a crisp manufacturer, they are going to want some kind of heads up as to what the yield is looking like across their different markets that they buy from. So being able to give this predictive yield model and get some insights very early on about how the crop is looking and enable the farmer to make some interventions if necessary. And this is a really neat model that is based on connecting the data that's been captured around solar radiation. So you have some sensors in the field. You can monitor the development of the canopy of the crop, and that gives you a very nice insight and a pretty accurate insight into what the crop is starting to look like as it goes forward. Just closing off on the case studies, I just want to leave you with 4 examples where the wider supply chains, we've talked about the potatoes and how they're starting to really these predictive yield models in the field, but there's also some additional technologies that I just wanted to talk to you about around sustainable supply chains. And I first like to introduce Breeder. Breeder is a company that is using cloud-based technologies to enable traceability and provenance from the birth of livestock. At the moment, they're focusing mainly on cattle, on beef, from birth to sale and slaughter. And this enables an entire audit of feed, health records, the medicines that have been administered to the animal. And it's enabling an increase in productivity as well, because you can also monitor, keep a hold of the genetics in the line as well. So it's a full end-to-end system. And by making the existing system more efficient and more productive, we need fewer animals, and that helps with the sustainability agenda. I've already introduced you to G's, the salad growers. They have been doing a piece of work with Microsoft to develop a predictive yield model for lettuces, for iceberg lettuces. They are under contract to deliver a certain number of lettuces to the retailers every week. And in order to ensure that that contract is met, they have to overplant the crop to take into account wastage or unusual weather conditions or anything that might compromise their ability to deliver on the contract. But what they can do based on years of data, literally years of data, both of purchasing patterns in store, but also in the shops rather, and also the performance of the crop in the field, the weather systems, the data around soil, the rate of growth, they're able to much more precisely match supply and demand. And this has enabled them to schedule their planting in a very different way, meaning that they have to plant fewer lettuces because they have reduced the wastage, because they have a much closer understanding of the relationship between supply and demand in any day of the year when customers will be going into the store and expecting to buy lettuces. Fresh produce obviously lends itself very well to these kinds of technologies, not least because there is more of a margin for the grower on these products than there is on very large scale commodity crops such as wheat. So many of these innovations have been developed in fresh produce. And another example is a company called Livetrace. It's a startup from the UK, cloud database, similar to Breeder in a way, in that it's an end-to-end solution delivering health insights of the way the crop has been managed and enabling the grower and the wider supply chain to have line of sight and visibility exactly as to what has happened to that particular vegetable or piece of fruit. And then finally, Consus Fresh. This is another cloud-based system working in factories and pack houses or warehouses. And this is about ensuring traceability and accuracy of the way the supply chain is working, label verification, ensuring that there's a machine that is correcting and ensuring that the correct barcodes are going on packaging, that it's not labeled as a packet of raspberries when they're actually strawberries. So these are the kinds of digitally enabled technologies that we're seeing for a sustainable supply chain. Now, the picture that I showed you a few slides ago of that farm of the future, that cartoon of the farm of the future, the current status of Agritech, most farmers pretty much have a smartphone, and being able to kind of leapfrog some of the interim technologies, particularly in countries like Africa, there is a lot of advice and insights able to be developed by the smartphone. So again, smartphone is a really important tool in the Agritech armory, although I don't think Apple would describe themselves yet as an Agritech company. The middle picture shows a drone. I said pretty ubiquitous as a drone on farms now. Not all farms have their own, but certainly they usually get advice from somebody who does. And then we've talked about controlled environment agriculture. It's still on a bit of a curve, but it's gaining traction fast. AI and machine learning, I think we're starting to learn from other sectors about the potential for this. I think it's still very much untapped. One of the big challenges in agriculture is for AI and machine learning is the development of training sets, is the procurement. How do you get enough sets of training data to be able to train the algorithm? And I'll talk to you about our hackathon in a minute, but there is now technology available to be able to generate synthetic data that can be used to train algorithms. So at the moment, a lot of these algorithms need thousands and thousands of photographs or images or pieces of data, which has been a limiting step to its adoption in the UK and I think more globally, but that is also set to change. The other big challenge is being able to convert the huge wealth of data to actionable insights. This is a sensor. In fact, this is the company that was working in the shipping industry and pivoted into agriculture that I mentioned at the beginning of my talk. We have farmers who are really overwhelmed with data. I think there is a broad understanding now of the importance of collecting data, but there is still a gap in almost, so what do I do with this data? Being able to convert that data into actionable insights is probably one of the biggest opportunities for technology companies to be able to convert that data into a very accessible, easy to use, easy to digest form on which farmers can then base their immediate decisions of the day, the month, or the year. So I wanted to change gear a little bit now and talk about the organisation that I run. I talked about the connections and the collaborations, the title of my talk, and the organisation that I run, Agri-TechE, we have been attempting over the last 8 years to build a global innovation hub in Agritech. Now, I won't read all this out, you can read it for yourself, but we're independent, we're not part of the British government, although you will meet some members of the British government or representatives of the British government, Agritech activities later on in the panel session. So we're independent, we're a membership organisation, and we're all about catalysing innovation in agriculture and horticulture. And key to what we do is this multidisciplinarity. So we work with those companies that are new to agriculture, as well as those that are existing companies in agriculture, who want to serve the industry, who want to understand what the opportunities are for them and how they can reach the market. And our vision is to be a globally recognised catalyst for this so-called open innovation. Remember that funnel that I showed you, the funnel is now open. It's now got lots of leaks and holes in it, which is a great thing because technology can move in and out of that funnel from all different sectors on its journey into the field or the glasshouse or the polytunnel. And also entrepreneurship, and I'll talk a little bit about what we've done to work with some of the startups. But just to set the scene a little bit about UK agriculture, and the reason I wanted to do this is to help frame the discussion later on in the panel session. So I mentioned earlier, as you know, that the UK has left the European Union, and farmers have, while we were in the Union, been supported by a common agricultural policy, which has given them farm business support. It's given them money for various things for production. And without that money, really a lot of farms in the UK are not viable. So with that money stopping, it was very important for the British government to think hard about how it wanted to tackle this problem. And what they decided to do was to create a new scheme, which is just rolling out at the moment, called the Environmental Land Management Scheme, or ELMS for short. Now, remember back at the beginning, I talked about the need for productive, regenerative, sustainable agriculture. And ELMS is about rewarding farmers for building practices that are going to help the environment. So this is not about food production, although having a healthy environment full of pollinating insects and healthy soils will of course help with the productive agriculture. But this is about rewarding farmers for investing in these so-called ecosystem services, for ensuring that their fields have margins to them that will welcome and be suitable for beneficial insects, for example, for helping ensure that water quality is good so that they're not polluting the watercourses with chemicals, for example. So this is all about public money now being used for so-called public good, these ecosystem services. And the National Farmers Union in the UK has absolutely risen to this challenge as well. And the journey to net zero, they've issued this plan whereby they would like to see farming as an industry being net zero for greenhouse gas emissions by 2040. That's a hugely ambitious goal, but they have set out some plans as to how they can see that being achieved. So there's a real kind of collective call to arms about the sustainability agenda. A couple of months ago in the UK, there was a plan for a national food strategy rolled out, which encompassed really the whole agri-food system, not just Agritech and the so-called pre-farm gate, but how the whole system could remember that pyramid at the beginning with healthy diets at the top. And this strategy looks at how all those enablers lower down the pyramid can be supported and developed and further strengthened in order to reach that goal of healthy diets. And then finally, I wanted to flag up that, and you'll be hearing about this in the panel discussion, UK Research and Innovation is the UK government's innovation agency and research agency that funds fundamental research and also innovation within businesses. So universities and businesses and research institutes are funded through this. And there's been a major programme of £90 million called the Transforming Food Production Industrial Challenge. And I will be talking to some of the people who've been involved in setting up and delivering that programme later on when we have our discussion session later. So you will be hearing more about that later on. So Agritech in action, empowered by innovation. I'd just like to share with you some thoughts that we have on this. And increasingly now we hear about the agri-food system. Okay, so there has been a lot of research doing deep dives into various elements of the system, maybe some metabolism in a particular variety of wheat, or some microbes, a particular class of microbes that live in soil. And we think that the way forward is a much more integrated approach that we're calling One Agriculture. That was inspired by the World Health Organization's program of One Health, which is about human and animal health and how everything all kind of comes together around a One Health umbrella, uniting and unifying the system. And we would like to see that applied to agriculture, where animal, human, environment, plants and soils and society all come together around a systems approach for agriculture, which, as I say, it is happening. And things like digital twins are very helpful in being able to understand and unpack that. This is very complicated, but we have thoughts in the UK to make a digital twin of the food system to try and help model what different interventions could look like and how changing one thing could have an impact elsewhere. And on that theme, where changing one thing can have an impact elsewhere, we need in the system to understand the interdependency across scales. So this graphic here shows, if you look at the bottom, the DNA helix, the absolute kind of molecular level within plants, microbes, soils, animals, how that interacts with those microscopic animals and insects that are in the soil, the roots of plants, the field, the farm, the landscape, the individuals in it, and then at the very top level, how we have all this collaboration, communication across the world, empowered by satellite technology, digital communications. And we need to ensure that we understand how things that we do at one scale can impact on things at another scale. And it may be in ways that we don't understand, and we need to avoid these unintended consequences where one intervention causes a perturbation elsewhere in the system that really is something you really didn't want to have happen. And then finally, this concept of time. So I think probably agriculture is one of the industries that really is constrained by time, seasonality. I can't think there's too many industries that are so at the mercy almost of nature's own biological rhythm, and who wouldn't want more time? Farmers are and the whole supply chain operates at a just-in-time, being really constrained by that. And one of the things that we're going to talk about at our conference, if I could give a shameless plug, in a few weeks we have our national conference where we're going to be talking about how you can change time for agriculture using technologies, using things like AI and digital solutions to be able to do that predictive yield modeling, to be able to develop the automation and the robotics that will generate more time, and how we can understand better that inherent biological clock that is in all parts of nature, and how we can help harness that to make more productive, efficient and sustainable agriculture. Our conference sits in the middle of what we call Agri-Tech Week. This is a program of events that I think some of them are online, some are in person, but some are online. So you'd be very welcome to come and join us to our Agri-Tech Week events. That's when we have our partners who are delivering a number of programs. Now, I just wanted to just pick up on this whole concept of the entrepreneurship piece. So we launched the UK's first Agritech business plan competition with an idea to try and just tease out some of those entrepreneurs who had ideas that would be helping agriculture potentially, but as yet we're still at the idea stage. And what we asked them to do was to develop a business plan. They presented it to judges. We had an audience where we let the audience become investors for the day. So we gave them £3,000. At the time, it was about $5,000 US, not real money, I hasten to add, pretend money. And these innovators and entrepreneurs presented their ideas to the judges, to the audiences, and the audiences invested. And the winner won some prizes and has been supported to accelerate their business ideas. We did that in the UK. We've run, I think, 4 or 5 of those now. There's now no shortage of accelerators and incubators and programs around, not just in the UK, but globally, to really help support those entrepreneurs get those business ideas going forward, which is fantastic. And these are the winners of the last business plan competition. The winner was the lady in the top left-hand corner, and she developed a seed coating for conifers, because when you're planting trees, they really need access to a lot of water. And she developed a capsule that you can plant the seed in, and it supplies the seed with everything it needs. So we can tell you more about that if anyone's interested in hearing more. Another thing that we have done to try and encourage that sort of ideation from different industries and from bring fresh thinking into the industry is via a hackathon. And I wanted to just show you some pictures and indeed a video of our hackathon. This is where we get some innovators, some entrepreneurs together with some technologies, a tech pantry, Raspberry Pis, Arduinos, sensors, circuit boards, and we set them a challenge to save agriculture in 48 hours. And they were using soil, and they made a real Raspberry Pi. Those of you in the audience with the technical knowledge will understand the significance of that. And I'd just like to show you a little video of the winners and how it all worked.
The winner of the Save the World Hackathon is the amazingly unpronounceable Alpaca Punch.
So that showed the winner was a company that developed, using a Raspberry Pi actually, technology to identify beneficial and other insects by their unique wing beat. And you can imagine how you could apply that in pest control management systems going forward. And I seem to have lost my slides. There we go. Right, now finally, I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about culture, because if what you want to do is to build collaborations and help with that commercialization, you want to build culture. So I just want to introduce you to our Young Innovators Forum, which is a vehicle by which we bring together early career farmers, scientists and industry professionals. And we bring the farmers into the laboratory, and we take the scientists and engineers out into the field, with the idea being that they walk a mile in the other person's shoes. And a lot of the innovators that are working in universities and research institutes and indeed businesses often don't get the opportunity to go out and see firsthand what it's really like on the farm. And similarly, the farmers would like line of sight of the technologies and research that's underway in the innovation community. So building that culture at an early career stage, we think is really important, and that's our Young Innovators Forum. We also take missions. We would love to come to South Korea and bring a mission with some of our businesses. This is an example. This is at the headquarters of Bayer in St. Louis in Missouri, and we took a number of our companies over to explore the potential for agriculture and their technologies that they were all developing in that market. Obviously, the last year, 18 months has been a strange one. So most of our activities, all of our activities actually have been online. So if anybody would like to be part of our network, you'd be more than welcome. Geography is absolutely no barrier to engagement. So let's be friends. And then finally, just to talk to you a little bit about some of the big agricultural shows that are underway. In the UK, again, they were all online last year, but this is an opportunity by which we can actually get the technologies out in front of farmers so that they can have a look at what's going on, literally kick the tires. And that picture that has just stopped in the middle there, the lady with the white shirt and the brown bag, she is the president of our National Farmers Union. So really coming to see the technology in action is really important. So I'm going to stop there. I will see you again later at the end of the conference with the moderated panel, where we'll be introducing you to Dr. Elizabeth Wareham and Mr. Callum Murray, who work for UK Research and Innovation and the Department for International Trade here at the UK, in the UK. For now, these are my contact details. Please do get in touch with me. I would very much like to see you, like to hear from you. I'm sorry I'm not there in person, but I wish you a very successful conference, and I look forward to seeing you at the end of the day. Thank you so much for your attention.